this time you didn't sabotage? What if this time you stood still, even as the fear screamed? What if instead of running, you paused, breathed, and told yourself, I'm allowed to have this? Because you are. You are allowed to be at peace. You are allowed to feel joy. You are allowed to have success that doesn't end in collapse. You are not here to constantly earn your right to exist. And every time you sabotage, you reinforce the lie that says you must suffer first, that your worth is tied to how much you've bled. But the truth is quieter, more ancient, and more radical. You were worthy before the pain, and you are still worthy now. Your life doesn't have to be a masterpiece today. It doesn't even have to be fixed. It just has to be yours. Chosen, claimed, owned. And that starts with noticing the moment the old you rises to burn it all down again, and saying no. Not this time. Not this version of me. Not again. Because you're not weak. You're not cursed. You're not doomed to repeat. You're just afraid of becoming someone who no longer fits inside your past. But that's the cost of becoming real. You have to outgrow the version of you that others understood. You have to become someone new, even if it means becoming someone no one recognizes. Nietzsche once said, "One must still have chaos in oneself to be able to give birth to a dancing star." The chaos is not your enemy. It's the source. But you have to shape it. Name it, claim it, use it, or it will shape you. Quietly, violently, forever. So here's the question. When will you stop standing at the edge of your own life? When will you stop calling your fear instinct, your delay logic, your suffering strength? You don't need more time. You don't need another breakdown. You don't need anyone to save you. You just need to stop burning what you were born to build. You don't sabotage because you're weak. You sabotage because you're powerful, and you're afraid of what happens if you use it. But what happens if you don't? What happens if the strongest part of you dies buried beneath your excuses? What happens if the best version of you never arrives? Because you never opened the door. No one is coming to do it for you, and no one should. This life is yours. This path is yours. This moment is yours. Don't let fear hold the pen any longer. Write the next chapter, and don't sabotage it. There is a war inside you, not between good and evil, but between what is and what could be. Between the version of you that says, stay small, stay safe, and the one that whispers, rise, even if it breaks you. The battlefield is not outside. It's your own mind, your own body, your own silence. Because when you try to move forward, when you reach for change, you are not just chasing a better life. You are challenging every system inside you that was built to keep you in place. Systems of belief, systems of habit, systems of emotional survival. And these systems don't collapse quietly. They scream, they fight back, they trigger fear, guilt, shame, and doubt. You'll hear voices that say, this isn't who you are. You're being fake. You're leaving people behind. You'll fail and prove everyone right. But those voices are not truth. They're echoes, ghosts of old pain trying to keep you loyal to a past that never served you. Imagine a prisoner who's been in the dark for years. You unlock the door. You tell him he's free, but he doesn't move. Because the outside world is blinding. Because freedom feels like exposure. Because he's learned to fear the light. That's you. Sabotage is not rebellion. It's fear of the unknown dressed as defiance. You think you're asserting control, but really, you're avoiding power. Because power demands responsibility. It demands change. It demands that you stop blaming the world. and start facing what you've allowed. That's terrifying, because if you accept that you are no longer a victim, you lose the right to make excuses. You have to look at your life and say, "This is mine. I created this, and now I must uncreate it." That is the real pain of transformation. Not the effort, but the accountability. Growth is not just about reaching new heights. It's about leaving behind the identity that kept you safe at the bottom. And it's lonely. It's quiet. It's confusing. You'll lose people who loved your brokenness. You'll lose admiration built on suffering. You'll lose a version of yourself who didn't know how to say no. But in that loss, you will find space. Space for clarity, for strength, for becoming someone who doesn't self-destruct when things start going right. You were not born to live in cycles of almost and never. You were not made to rise and collapse, until you stop rising altogether. You are not a tragic story waiting to happen, but you must stop writing endings that justify your fear. The world doesn't need another self-aware person who never moves. It needs someone who breaks the loop, who rewrites the story, even if their hands are shaking. Because courage isn't loud. It doesn't scream. It doesn't glow. Courage looks like standing in the middle of your fear and saying, "Not this time." And you can. You are not broken. You are buried beneath layers of performance, protection, and programming. You don't need to become someone else. You need to return to the self that never had permission to exist. The one who believed. The one who tried. The one who didn't know how to lie to survive. That self is still here, quiet, waiting, hoping you'll choose him this time. Sigmund Freud called it repetition compulsion. The unconscious drive to recreate pain, not because we enjoy it, but because it gives us control over what once felt uncontrollable. If your childhood was full of neglect, you might find yourself drawn to people who ignore you. If love always came with conditions, you might run from anyone who offers it freely. You sabotage not because you're irrational, but because your brain is trying to relive the trauma with the hope that this time it will end differently. It's a loop, and you mistake the loop for your identity. You think, "This is just who I am. I always ruin good things. I can't help it." But none of that is true. What you're calling personality is often just a defense mechanism hardened by repetition. Carl Jung called this the shadow, the part of you that holds everything you were taught to hide. Anger, desire, ambition, power, need, grief. It's the version of you that had to disappear so the world would find you acceptable. But here's the catch. You cannot heal by rejecting that version. You cannot grow by pretending it doesn't exist. When you sabotage, it's often your shadow trying to speak, trying to be seen, trying to break out of the cage you built for it. And the more you repress it, the more it takes control, in ways you don't even notice. You miss opportunities. You pick the wrong partners. You accidentally forget deadlines. You delay decisions until they become crises. Not because you're chaotic, but because your unacknowledged self is trying to reclaim its voice. And here's the most dangerous part. The more intelligent you are, the better you are at sabotaging. Smart people build beautiful prisons. They justify procrastination with philosophy. They defend avoidance with logic. They write essays about healing while refusing to look in the mirror. Because awareness is not enough. You can know why you're stuck. You can explain every psychological pattern in perfect detail. But if you're still operating from fear, that knowledge becomes a weapon you turn against yourself. You say things like, I'm not ready yet because my inner child still needs nurturing. Or, I can't commit to growth until I've healed every past wound. That sounds deep. But it's a disguise. A very clever disguise. It's not healing. It's hiding, dressed in spiritual language. Arthur Schopenhauer believed that human will is not a rational force. It's blind. It's primal. It's driven by desire, not reason. And that's what makes sabotage so cruel. You may know what's good for you. You may even want it with all your heart. But if your will is still bound to a story where you're unworthy, you'll burn down every good thing you touch. Not because you want to, but because some part of you believes you must. To punish yourself, to stay small, to remain in familiar pain. Because unfamiliar peace feels like a betrayal. Think about that. You sabotage not because you don't want more, but because having more would destroy the only self-image you've ever known. The broken version, the burdened version, the one people pitied, the one who had reasons for staying still. To become someone else, to truly rise, you'd have to let that story die. And grief is not just for people. It's for identities. It's for excuses. It's for the self you built to survive what you never deserved. And letting that go is brutal. It's why most people don't grow, not because they can't, but because they won't mourn who they've been. You say you want to be better. You swear you're ready to change. You've read the books, you've made the plans, you've seen the signs. But when the moment comes, the critical moment, you pull away. You disappear. You sabotage. And you don't know why. You blame your lack of discipline. You say you're lazy, weak, inconsistent. But those are only symptoms. Beneath that failure is something far older, far deeper. You are not just resisting change. You are protecting the version of yourself that was built on survival, not creation. And survival hates change, because change means risk. Risk of failure, risk of judgment, risk of facing yourself without the stories you've hidden behind. We sabotage not because we hate success, but because success requires the death of an old identity. One we didn't choose, but one we've gotten used to. There's a strange comfort in ruin, a dark familiarity in falling apart. Because chaos can feel like home when it's what you were raised in. When the pain is predictable, it feels safer than the unknown. So you delay, you distract, you overthink. You become an expert at convincing yourself that now is not the time. You tell yourself, I just need to get more organized. I need to feel more confident. I need to wait until I'm ready. But ready is a myth. You will never feel ready to kill the version of yourself you've been protecting. And that version is clever. It knows how to speak through fear. It whispers every time you're about to move forward. It shows you worst-case scenarios like a prophet of doom. And worst of all, it pretends to be you. Arthur Schopenhauer once said, "Man can do what he will, but he cannot will what he wills." You may want to succeed, but your will is not free. It's shaped by memory, by trauma, by the thousands of quiet moments where you learned, if I reach too high, I get hurt. So instead, you lower your standards. You romanticize suffering. You claim the comfort is for the weak, and struggle is where you belong. But that isn't nobility. That's self-protection disguised as philosophy. You were not born to fail. You were taught to expect it. And so you sabotage before others get the chance to. It's easier to fall on your own terms than to rise and risk being pushed. It's easier to burn the bridge yourself than to watch someone else do it. But here's the brutal truth. Every time you sabotage, you're making a decision. You're choosing the known over the unknown, the familiar over the free. You're choosing to stay inside the prison you've decorated with quotes and excuses. You don't destroy your progress because you're broken. You destroy it because deep down, a part of you still believes you don't deserve peace. And the more progress you make, the louder that belief gets. Because healing isn't just hard, it's terrifying. It asks you to forgive, to confront, to let go of the identity built on suffering. And most people won't, because pain is predictable. And joy? Joy feels like a lie you're not worthy of. You are not lazy. You are not incapable. You are protecting yourself from a future you don't feel worthy of living. You fear that if you truly change, you'll lose the people who only liked the broken version of you. You'll lose the narrative that made you interesting. You'll lose the excuse that kept you safe. So you self-destruct, quietly, elegantly, in ways that almost look like logic. But it's not logic, it's fear wearing the mask of intelligence.